better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror Movie Night. I'm Steve.
Mostly. I'm Sean. Hello.
How's it going, Sean?
It's going, dude.
It's going
again,
good.
once again, pretending like we haven't been talking for the past hour.
Yeah, we had a really nice conversation with Johnathan Rand of Michigan and American Chillers fame, notoriety,
which was so cool.
Yeah, it was
super
cool. He's we've met him a couple times. I've met him at least I know a couple times at his store, Chillermania in Northern Michigan. It was nice to be able to chat with him, kind of go in depth on his process and that sort of stuff. So that was fun to be able to do. But before we get into that interview, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. First thing, today is February 17th, and this won't be released for a couple of weeks, but the trailer for Cruella just came out.
Yeah, it did.
With Emma Stone. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that, Sean?
So I'm gonna put this on record. I'm gonna say this, and it's going to be awkward when eventually our podcast blows up and we interview Emma Stone. But if she wants, she could punch me right in my face, especially in the Cruella getup, dude. Oh my god! Wow. Like, yes, Emma Stone is very, very attractive, and it looks like there's gonna be a great. It looks like it's gonna be a fun movie, man. It looks like it's gonna be an interesting take.
I was gonna say I wasn't asking about how she looked.
No, I know. I know. I'm just saying. Listen, that's not to objectify by any means. I'm just saying that Emma Stone is clearly a very attractive lady, and then this came out, and I'm like, I didn't know that I needed, Cruella get up, but here we are.
Yeah. When she lights her thing on fire.
So cool.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
That trailer was, obviously it's going to be a darker story because it's Cruella, but that whole trailer was full of fire and it was okay, cool.
Lots of cool stuff. It almost felt like it kind of gave me Maleficent meets Harley Quinn vibes.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying Harley Quinn-esque which makes sense.
I like it. I'm very excited. Plus, because I haven't seen 101 Dalmatians in a really long time.
Oh yeah, it's been.
And I'm pretty sure even as a kid, I just never what does Cruella do? I don't what is she? I just was evil woman in 101 Dalmatians. So I'm kind of really curious to get a backstory to her.
That's true. I have no inkling of Cruella at all.
I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who might be like, you dummy, she does this and we know this already and you're a dum and I'm gonna be
owns a mine.
Something, man.
Some random job.
And it looks like there's gonna be some throws. It looked like they were gonna have the fun chase scene and stuff, or at least
with the old buggy car thing.
Another
thing that was announced today, I don't know if you saw it, was that Netflix just hit my desk. Netflix is making a series called Wednesday. That's about Wednesday Addams. It's being directed by Tim Burton. It's going to be his first TV series he's ever done. It's an 8-episode arc. I'm happy to be the person that informs you of this. I know I wanted to tell you earlier, but
I had no idea.
I know that from what I thought, Tim Burton was working on Beetlejuice 2 currently, or it was in production. But
I think that's been a thing for 7 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while, at least in production. But so they just announced the Wednesday thing. I think it could be good. I think as long as they don't kind of CW it the way that they did Sabrina.
Right. I don't want to I don't want to shit all over Sabrina or anything. But I think that people had different things in their mind. I know that
the first season's pretty good, and the second season's not bad, but the first it just definitely went away from what I thought it was going to.
Right. Plus they made some mistakes along the way. But visually it was super cool, but they made some social mistakes along the way. Which, speaking of, I feel like we can't talk about a Wednesday. Well, first off, is it going to be an adult Wednesday thing?
It's probably growing up. I don't know how old. Maybe 18, high school age. I think it's going to be young adult. I think it's going to be it's
that makes sense. Audience. That makes sense. Very curious.
It's cool that Tim Burton's on. I don't know, man. he's like, honestly, like at a certain point, everything has kind of sucked that he put out. Like, I wasn't a fan of Miss Peregrine's. Dumbo was kind of strange. I like Big Eyes a lot. That was like the last Tim Burton thing that I saw that I really enjoyed. I mean, even Alice, as much as I love Alice was not amazing.
Well, I think that it's at least for me, I mean, I love Beetlejuice is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. I've seen Beetlejuice a concerning amount of times. I think that Tim Burton, for me, like his strongest movies are before he really before things went digital, which I understand why they did, but I think that his aesthetic has more charm when it is with practical effects and real sets. And I think that they just went too strong digital, which a lot of movies have that problem. I think Star Wars, like as much as people are frustrated with the latest trilogy, I think Star Wars is the perfect mix of real effects, real sets, and digital. And I think that more movies,
their original series that they're doing, like the main.
And it's not like you don't have the budget, Tim Burton, and Disney.
Right.
But here's the other thing. I feel like we have to talk about it. I mean, Tim Burton is he's got some people are not super stoked with him right now, and I don't know everything about it, but like I think I find it interesting that Netflix is really just kind of moving forward with that. Because again, I don't know everything. I don't want to take a stance on it. I have always been a big Tim Burton fan, but I don't want to just talk about this show without acknowledging that he said some things that weren't super cool and made some at least implications that weren't super cool that I feel.
I mean, he basically, like, people, I guess for anyone that doesn't know, people said and have brought up, there's no people of color or very rarely people of color in Tim Burton movies. And I mean, I'm trying to remember, we watched Edward Scissorhands not super long ago. I did. And, the only black person in the whole movie is the police officer, and you like barely see him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think Tim Burton said something to the effect of, it's not that I'm not casting black people or people of color. It's just when I create these stories, I am imagining white people. Kind of more or less. I mean, I can pull up the exact quote, but I just, I mean, I think it is kind of strange. I think that he has kind of fallen by the wayside because, it definitely is. It's a glaring thing in his films.
Well, to me, it's honestly the lack. The statement is what's really concerning to me. Not that the lack of, people of color in his movies isn't problematic. I'm not saying that. I understand that you have a certain aesthetic that you go for, Tim, which is very pale skin, sunken eyes. I get that that's an aesthetic that you go for, but the implication that black people couldn't exist in your worlds in the styles that you're putting it just seems like a bit much. And I think that's what a lot of people are upset about. I know that on TikTok, because I'm on TikTok all the time. I saw a ton of artists. It became sort of a movement to start drawing people of color in Tim Burton styles.
Yeah, I saw that too.
To prove him wrong. So I think that I just think for the sake of his career that he at least has some more explaining to do.
I agree. He said, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. He said, talking to, I think, the Washington Post, he said, things either call for things or they don't. And he said, I remember when I was a child watching the Brady Bunch and they started to get all politically correct, like, okay, let's have an Asian child and a black child. I used to get more offended by that than just, he says, I grew up watching blaxploitation movies, right? And I said, that's great. I didn't go like, okay, there should be more white people in these movies. And I think that just kind of rules, I don't know, it just, there's no inclusivity, there's no even attempt at it. That's one thing. I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but something that we've discussed. I mean, like I said, this episode isn't going to come out for a couple of weeks, but we're lining up these people to interview from the horror community and people that are of all walks of life. And one thing that we're noticing is everyone that we're booking is a straight white man. And we're making a conscious effort to get people from all walks of life, from any facet of the universe to come talk on our show. We don't want to just be represented by straight white men, especially two straight white men. So I think attempting to have that inclusivity, is so important, and making a comment like you did is just like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, it's especially that other comment about things like the Brady Bunch and whatever. So I get what he's saying to the degree of like you can tell when a show is just like, well, we had to have some diversity, so we threw in
Yeah.
random stuff, but that's lazy. Like I get that that's not good, but that doesn't mean like there are ways to make it natural, like there are diverse people in this world. There are a bunch of diverse creative people in this world, and I think that it's not, there's just ways they should be in there naturally. It shouldn't feel like this
Yeah.
forced thing, and that's why it's exactly like you're talking about with our show. It's not like we've been reaching out to all sorts of people because all sorts of people have a ton to offer, to the horror community, and there's a ton of people that we admire in just the creative world in general. But for whatever reason, yeah, right now, the responses that we've been getting and the people that we've been able to book have been straight white men.
Yeah.
But damn it,
That'll
we're going to
change.
change it. Yeah,
It'll
absolutely.
change.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think going back, I think Wednesday's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see who they're going to cast. If it were some years ago, I know that she just voiced her, but I would say Chloe Grace Moretz would be cool.
Yeah.
I would like to see the girl that played Lydia in the Beetlejuice musical that we saw.
Oh yeah,
she was really cool.
Yeah.
And, I think that I know that she's in TV. Her name's Sophia and something. I can't remember exactly what it is, but that would be cool. So,
do you think that they're gonna try to make an aggressive statement and like just go and cast, a person of color or or anything?
I don't think so. I think Wednesday needs to have translucent skin.
That's fair.
I think
you're a racist, dude. No.
I think that's how they'll cast it, is someone that has
we'll see,
whitest skin humanly possible.
Yeah, we'll see. I was just curious if they would do it. Like, what if Tim was just like, fuck it, they want diversity, we'll give them diversity, like, it would just come off the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't foresee that happening from Tim Burton.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for that. Another thing that we wanted to talk about is kind of some concepts that we're coming up with for segments on our show. We're still obviously, this is only the second interview that we've had, the third episode that we're doing, with a bunch lined up for weeks in the future. But we're trying to think of things to incorporate the public. One of the things that I thought about is doing what I would call like quote unquote horror stories. So basically it's the story of how you first learned about or got into horror. We would have people write into us, telling us their stories of, like Sean's story of walking in and seeing, Drew Barrymore just hanging on a tree and scream, like that sort of thing.
And I would very much so like to see that happen because I am truly so curious. It's one of my favorite things. The second that I find out that someone is even kind of into horror, I just want to know. I want to know, what was the moment, like what's one of the moments, or what is the moment that really scared you as a kid of being exposed to something? And then what's that moment that hooked you, that made you go from the kid that was scared to the kid that just embraced horror movies and became obsessed. I love hearing about that. Please, let us know what you guys think, and how should we do that? Should we get like a?
I think
for it.
We have our email. It's mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com.
Write it down.
I was gonna say it's what we use to book people normally, but I think people can just email us at mostlyhorrormovienight.com. Put in the subject horror stories or horror story. So that way I know what it is, and we'll just maybe do a couple every week, or we'll read them at the beginning of the show, because I think it's interesting, and definitely I'm sure people have some good stories.
Yeah, and then also, so what I was going to suggest, kind of like we did with Corella today. I don't know if we should make it a segment necessarily, but we could. But just like do updates. I guess you don't really get weekly updates on movies, but have segments at least every couple episodes where we talk about new horror that's coming out, whether it be books or art. But we should be actively searching. I mean, we already do, but maybe be the way to deliver some of this new stuff, just like you just told me about Wednesday. And I wonder if there's people, I guess it's coming out weeks later, but you know what I mean? I don't know.
Maybe there's people that still won't know on March 1st when this comes out.
And once we're all caught up and we're posting, the week after, and like people are hearing it in essentially as close to real time as a podcast is going to get, I think that could be a fun thing to do. Good way to start off each episode.
I agree. There's a Twitter handle right now. I think I told you about it in like a month ago, but I think it's just at horror calendar.
Mhm.
And basically as things come out, it just tweets like the title of the movie, what it's on, what it's about, and then the trailer.
Perfect.
Like as things come out, it's super cool. So
Great. So we can just steal their content and rebrand it as mostly
Exactly.
horror. Yeah,
no,
nice.
definitely go follow Horror Calendar because it's really cool. And then we'll
absolutely
talk
will.
about things that we have seen because I think it's really good way to express, what we're watching as well. So people can talk about it.
Right. Go follow them to get the initial info and then come to us for the hot takes.
A week later.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about. Oh, one other quick thing before we hop into the interview. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our friend Chelsea Jenkins. She's editing our videos for us.
Oh, yes.
Making them look nice. We had them going originally. We're recording this on Zoom, so it has the basic, just black background, but she's sprucing it up, making it look nice.
Yeah.
If you're on a podcast, you can't see anything, so it sucks for you. But if you're watching this on YouTube, it looks the awesome way it does because of Chelsea, and it will continue to because of Chelsea. So I just want to give her a quick shout out.
She's a crazy person. She's a crazy person. She's
working on like a million things right now.
She'll have you'll just be hanging out with her. She'll be fully engaged in the conversation, have 2 laptops out, and like her weird food of like pierogies and peas or whatever the fuck it is that she eats. And she'll just be like multitasking and just like and doing the coolest editing and making it look easy. Just clicking buttons,
truth.
man.
I hope she hears this because that's her to a T. Literally a couple minutes ago.
I've known her since kindergarten.
That's funny. All right, man. Well, yeah, we have a great interview with Johnathan Rand. And anything you want to say about the interview before we go into it, Sean?
You can see me trying to contain the fangirl inside and just geeking out a bit, and it was just really cool to talk to him. Super cool guy. And I think it's a fun video, or a fun fun interview, and you guys are gonna like it.
Yeah, I agree. He's super humble, really nice to talk to, and hope you guys enjoy the interview. All right, we are here with Johnathan Rand of Michigan Chiller and American Chiller fame. He has sold over 6 million copies of his work. Johnathan, how's it going today?
Going really good. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. I'm
great.
Good, Sean.
Super excited to talk with you.
Yeah, this is great.
I'm alive. I'm very excited. Yeah.
We'll throw the picture up earlier, but we're both from Michigan. Both Michiganians, however you want to say it. I lived in Wolverine, about 30 minutes away from, or like 10 minutes away from Chillermania.
Oh yeah.
Okay. At a portion of my life, and we've been to Chillermania and met you, as you can see, multiple times. So we'll throw that picture up later. Placement. But yeah, it's cool. We've both have read your stuff, since we were younger, and it's nice to be able to chat about your work in general.
Cool.
So just to get started, I read that you kind of growing up would go fly fishing and create some stories as you were doing it. Can you talk a little bit about like the first time that you wrote, and then kind of go into the first, like the creation of Michigan Chillers?
Yeah. Well, as far as writing goes, it started, I think my love affair with writing started probably way back in first grade. I wrote a short story called Henry the Coin Collector, which is like a complete ripoff of the Henry Huggins stuff that Beverly Cleary had written. But, as a first grader, it was fan fiction and just fun stuff to do. I never really had any aspirations of becoming an author. I love to read. I was constantly reading. And I would come up with short stories. I would get an idea, like you mentioned, fly fishing. I might be out, hunting or something like that. And I might just, if you're not catching any fish, you're out, especially fly fishing, and, I'm out casting away and thinking of ideas for stories. But it never really occurred to me that I would do this for a living. But interestingly, I got a job working at a radio station, and I was 18, and I got hired because I was able to read well and I was able to write well, because they needed somebody. You're working at a small town FM radio station. You're doing, you're wearing many hats.
Yeah.
So, not only was I on the air, but I was also, writing the news, and I was reading the news and recording the news for, the next jock on the radio. And that was my real love. I loved making radio commercials in the production studio, and I would create these stories out of, instead of having, a guy talking like this, come down to this bank and open up your checking account. I didn't sound like that.
Mhm.
I turned my commercials into stories, and it was, I just had so much fun doing that. And I made a career out of that. And around 1995, I started dabbling with a couple of novels, and they met with regional success pretty well, in the Midwestern area, Great Lakes area. And that's when I came up with the idea for Michigan Chillers. And the first one came out in March of the year 2000. And I'd thought about that, because I was so excited about the idea, and I thought, this would be so cool. Kids in Michigan would probably be excited to read about places around the state. And if it does take off, then I can expand and I can turn it into, American Chillers. And really, that's exactly, what happened. In fact, I would get letters in the mail from kids that were, they'd read the books, and they'd say, they'd come from Ohio or something and pick up the books, and then they'd write me a letter and say, hey, I'm in Ohio, why don't you write this? Or, or Wisconsin and such. And then just kind of, it had it turned into its own monster. So
That's awesome. No pun intended.
Yeah.
So before we get into kind of like the initial publishing and that sort of stuff, where do your inspirations come from in terms of the I don't want to say darker subject matter, but everything has that kind of horror twinge to it, or horror for kids. So where do those inspirations come from for the horror genre for you?
I would say a couple things, because I think every, or most kids like to read, scary stories,
Right.
And I was certainly among those. I'd go to the library and I'd come home, and I'd tuck a book under my pillow with a flashlight, and I'd, pull the sheets over my head, and I'd sit there and I'd scare myself silly with these, scary ghost stories. And
Yes.
so I think, as far as like the, these are stories for kids. These are, so they're not really what I would consider dark these days, are completely, different from that. But they're fun stories. They're always those stories that, it's like, oh, you're horrified for a moment, but you close the book and everything's okay. And then and I can't, or you'd scare yourself to the point where it's like, oh, I'm not going to read this ever again. And the next night you'd be like, reading.
Yes.
It. So, and I think a lot of it came from that, but there was also too, old time radio, which there were several stations on AM, and I would plug in, I had a little plastic cheap earphone, and I would scan through the dial when it was bedtime, and I would scan through, and I'd find little stations and they were playing like Lights Out or something. And I loved these 30-minute, full dramatization radio horror stories. And some of those they were so visual, I can still remember them to this day. And I think that's probably what also sparked my love of radio and audio. But, I think it just goes back to the fact that as I progressed in my reading, I don't want to say that the horror grew darker, but I became my reading material became much wider in scope. I was in school in 5th grade, and I had a guy that I went to school with by the name of Craig Jones, and we rode the bus like 45 minutes to get to the school every day. And he and his brother, these guys are like crazy. They're like paramilitary guys living in northern Michigan in 5th grade. And his brother, his brother had, all kinds of rifles and things like that. It was really kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he had this book, a series called The Executioner, which is by no means meant for 5th grade boys. But Craig turned me on to these, and they were all like, Detroit Death Watch. And, it had the alliteration of these titles. And so I tell people, if there hadn't have been this Executioner series, there probably wouldn't be the Michigan Chillers. Obviously, the totally different genres and types of stuff. But that's kind of where I was at. And I was reading well beyond, by the time I was in 5th grade, I was reading stuff I probably shouldn't have been, but I was reading, much more mature stuff at that age.
Yeah.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because Sean and I were talking about the alliteration of your titles. I don't know if you're familiar with Magic Tree House.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Series. That's another series that I remember reading around the same
Yes.
time. I was like, man, those both had those alliterative titles, and I was like, I'm curious about that, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something about that is just so much fun. Like I
Yeah.
think that really like draws kids in, you know. I don't know why.
It is, and that's the thing too. Is I think for kids too, it's fun because it sparks their own imagination. You know, there's not a day that goes by where I don't get an email, a letter. I mean, I had kids, you know, I'm at where I'm at right now is Chillermania in a kind of a back office. And there were kids in today, and one kid brought in like a list of titles for towns around, you know, the Michigan. And these were all titles, you know, and this kid's like, you can write this one and maybe this one, but write this one first and then give me a free copy. And can you put my name in the, yeah, I'm going to get right on that, you know, but it's cool. And I love seeing that these kids, they get their own titles and all of a sudden they're off and you know, their imagination is running wild.
Yeah. I think that was one of my favorite things. We were some of the kids that you were, you know, targeting and really inspiring. Not just kids that were reading your books, but kids specifically from Michigan. And I feel like on so many fronts, you really nailed getting our attention. From giving us like that room to have that sort of imagination. The books are so like the titles are very easy to remember because they're so, what's the word? I can't think of the word. What's alliteration or is how?
The alliterative. Yeah.
And just like the school touring thing. And I read a couple interviews about how you went about like pitching them and making sure that they got into libraries and stuff like that. I don't know. It just seems like the more that I learned about your process, the more genius it seemed.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be, if it was genius. It was just kind of like necessity, really. I really felt, I mean, I was very passionate about it. And I just thought, you know, I really felt that, you know, I enjoyed the whole process of the writing, and I knew I had to figure out a way to get these books out into the hands of kids. And then if I could, and if they were any good, then they would really help do the rest. So
absolutely.
So can you give a little bit of a background, because I think it's something that I personally didn't know until I read it. So, you know, like I mentioned before, you have over 6 million copies sold, but you're self-published, which I feel like is a crazy feat. Can you talk about the initial like pressing and taking it to, you know, the hotels and like the different places that you took your books to?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, I started, the first book I wrote was a novel called The Laurentian Channel, which is kind of like a murder mystery type thing. And it was picked up by a publisher. And while I was kind of waiting for this whole thing to kind of go to press and everything, I really became disillusioned with the publishing industry, watching what was going on. And you know, I just felt there was a tremendous amount of waste. You know, and one thing that I've always said is that a lot of people in the publishing industry don't know what they're doing, and they're very good at it. And I hold that to this day. I felt that, you know, I didn't want to be doing the same thing that everybody else was doing. And I thought that's the only, I mean, my background was, you know, marketing and advertising. And so when I took this on myself, and I thought, you know, I'm going to try to self-publish this. See, the first book that I actually self-published was an audiobook. That's why the company is called Audiocraft Publishing Incorporated.
Okay.
And it was formed in 1997 as a corporation to publish this haunted Lighthouse audiobook, which is it's an actual place based west of the Mackinac Bridge, the very real island and the Lighthouse of St. Helene. I wrote the story completely as an audiobook, and I did try to pitch it to some publishers, and they were, you know, nobody was interested. They thought it'd be too expensive, and I thought, you know, well, look, I could write the story, I can narrate the story, I can do the music, I can do the sound effects. This is what I do. And I think they probably looked at, you know, me like Lil Abner, you know, like, yeah, sure you can. And but I did, and I recorded it in this little cabin, you know, in the woods, and mass produced it on cassette tape, and used the money that was earned from that. I was very, very careful with any money that came in with that. And at the end of the summer, this was 1998, at the end of the summer, I talked to a lot of the bookstores that had this, because there weren't very many, there were a few. And they said, you know, we had a lot of people pick it up, and they thought they liked the idea of an audiobook, but they were interested in the novel. So I used the money that was earned from that to actually publish St. Helene as a novel in the year 1999. But getting back to your question too about getting it into places that you wouldn't necessarily think of, places to sell a book. I printed these books, got them all, ready to go. And I didn't find a lot of bookstores that were interested. Now up north where I was, yes, I found the reception was pretty cool. People were like, yeah, we'll give it a try. And so I was very grateful for that. But around the state, not so much. And I thought, man, I really got to figure out a way to get these out there. And I thought, people come to Northern Michigan. This is a popular tourist destination. And they come from all over the world. They don't come to Northern Michigan in the summertime to go to a bookstore. But they do have to eat, they do have to sleep, and they do have to put gas in their car. So that's what I did with my wife. We put all these books in the back of my white Jeep Cherokee, and we drove around. And I wouldn't take no for an answer. I'd talk to whoever was at the gas station or whatever, and I'd say, hey, I got this book here. And they'd say, well, we're not a bookstore, we don't sell books. And I'd say, exactly, that's why I want these books, here. And then they'd say, well, we don't have any money, a budget for that, to that. And I said, fine, cool. I'll tell you what, I'm going to set, I'll give you 24 of them, set them here on the counter. And, if you sell them, for everyone you sell, you get this much, I get this much. And I'll check in with you in a week or two. And if you haven't sold any books, I'll come and get them and I'll give you one for your trouble. And so that worked because it was like, hey, it just got me out of their face. And, but the cool thing that happened was I started getting the phone calls. The phone calls started coming in and saying, hey, we're out of these books, they're all sold out. We need some more. And so we, had this little circuit, where we'd load up more books and take them around and, one book, and then there's 2 titles, and then there's 3, and then there's 4. And that went on for a couple of years. But in the meantime, they'd also been picked up by some larger distributors, including, back at the day, there was the 4 big bookstores, a lot, Barnes and Noble, B. Dalton, Walden Books, and Borders, and the like, which, most of those they're gone now, but it worked. It was a tactic and a technique that was a lot of work. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it was very successful overall.
That's awesome. The drive to be kind of, to do things yourself. We had a conversation last week with a director who basically did every single thing in his crew of his movie. And I think this kind of lines right along with that, with
100%
published and, taking that upon yourself to really make it big is awesome. And obviously it worked, like we said before.
I'm curious, the juggling, because that's as a creator, I'm trying to figure out how to balance the business side of things and the creative side. And you never found like a burnout like that? Like, how did you have like a strict like schedule for yourself on when to be creative and when to focus on the business side, or how did you go about that?
I would love to tell you that I had it all figured out, and I'd love to tell you that I have it all figured out. But the truth is not that. The truth isn't that, because it continues to change. And I think if you're a creative person, you've got to give yourself that freedom. One thing that I did find, and I found this probably, and I would say maybe probably 12, maybe 15 years ago, was that for me, my creative time, when I'm at my best is early mornings. And so what I do is, and I've been doing this for years now, is I get up early, and my creative time is early in the morning. And I don't, by the time, I mean, literally, and when I say early in the morning, it used to be like 5, and then it got earlier. And now I get up at 2:30. And that's when, well, don't be that impressed. I go to bed at like 8 o'clock, so it's like I'm an old guy now. It's like, but but really that's what it is. I get up and I have no trouble getting up. I just pop right out of bed, and I make coffee, let one of the dogs out, and I spend my first couple of hours writing and working on. I might write in my journal. I might work on an outline for a book or something, a draft or whatever I might do. But that is my time to really be creative. And I don't work too much in the nuts and bolts of the business aspect, so to speak. I do layouts for covers and graphic design. So I'll do that. That's at that time as well. And then usually my wife and I will hit the gym. We do that, 6 days a week, and then it's off to the business day. And I'm usually here by 7 or 7:30, and I put in a pretty full day. But my time here, especially in the summertime at Chillermania, the place is packed with people.
Yeah.
There's no possible way I can sit down and get anything done, writing wise. So my creative time, as far as a balance, is working, really making certain that I get all that creative juices flowing and done in the morning hours.
Okay.
So-
that probably sets you up for the day. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Because
that.
I would never get it done if I said, okay, I'm gonna later I'm gonna work on a book later on in the afternoon. Then I'm too burned out. I really am.
Yeah.
Doing that.
That makes sense.
For people that are not from Michigan that are listening, which hopefully is a lot of people, explain Chillermania, because I think it's really cool. I mean, you've had the store for a long time, and obviously as you've grown your different series, it's just kind of, it hasn't gotten any bigger, but there's just more stuff on the inside.
Yeah, for sure.
So talk about having that little kind of like mania haven. I think that's so unique that you don't really see like a there's no Goosebumps store somewhere or anything like that. So
what happened was back around 2004, we were really having some growing pains. I think, one of the things that a lot of authors, self-published authors, they're working towards that dream of getting attention getting the attention of a larger publisher or something of that sort. And while I've certainly entertained that, and I've had that with some of the larger publishers, even as recently as this past year, 2020, I turned down 2. And I've figured out now that, at this point, I'm too much of a control freak to let somebody else do it, right or wrong. I'm not saying that. Again, I have to go back, and my list of mistakes and things that my screw ups are completely, but they're mine, and I love being able to go, okay, that didn't work, let's try this. Well, around 2004, things were really exploding, and I thought, man, I need some offices. I need places that this has grown beyond putting books in the basement now. I can't do that. So I thought, well, and I struck up a conversation with this guy, and I thought, if I'm going to find a place that is to do this like a retail store, if I'm going to have offices, I'll have a retail store and a place with warehouses. Well, on this property here was a used car dealership, and it was owned by a guy by the name of Chuck Stoika. And Chuck would be out every single day. I'd see him outside, and he'd be drinking a Coca-Cola. And if he sold probably, a dozen cars over the summer, he was probably pretty happy. And I wound up talking to him, and over the summer, I found we wound up working out a deal. Well, he's got this building here, which was his offices, and then to the south was a big warehouse and some property there. So I wound up buying both of the chunks of property and converted this building into the Chillermania, which is the retail store, and then my office here. And the warehouse, which he was doing a lot of the work for the cars, that's kind of our holdover shipping area. So when we get orders for the smaller distributors, our online orders, everything gets processed over there. And then we built another warehouse that's it's pretty massive. That one's 40 by 80, and there's just thousands upon thousands. There's a fork truck in there, and that's there. And then there's another warehouse up in Toppin, and be about 2-3 miles away. But it's cool because it's a centrally located store right off I-75. We live just a few miles away. We live also maybe about 10-15 minutes from the Pellston Regional Airport, which is really handy. And being on I-75, it's that main artery that comes up from the Detroit area as well. It's pretty easy to find. People can, if you're headed up to Mackinac Bridge, or the Mackinac Island area, it's easy on, easy off I-75. So, the stores open 7 days a week in the summertime. And
you have that billboard too, right? Like you still have that billboard up. Nice.
Yeah, gigantic billboard as you're headed north on I-75. You can see the big, billboard, the Chillermania billboard. So, and it's cool because we get, in the summertime, like this time of year, like in the winter months, I'm traveling a lot. We do have another store at the Oakland Mall, which we haven't even been able to open up. We had one at Lakeside Mall. We moved that over to Oakland Mall, and that we moved over in July of 2020. But with the pandemic, we haven't been able to even open that. But this makes it like a really kind of a cool destination. And routinely, we'll have families call, and they might be from, like this past summer, St. Louis, Missouri, Miami, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia. They'll drive all, for days and make it a family event to come here, which for me, I mean, that's pretty humbling, and it's really an honor to have that. And, but when I have like this, somebody calls my publicist and says, our son never read before, and he was failing fourth grade. Now, thanks to the American Chillers and the Michigan Chillers, he's back up. He's doing great. We promised we'd take him to, Chiller Mania. 2-day drive. Is Johnathan Rand going to be there? And Sue, my publicist, is great. You're coming for 2 days. He'll be there. I'll make sure of that. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, like I said before, as both of us being from Michigan, like I said, last summer we were up in northern Michigan, and I was like, you know what? A part of our trip this day, we're just gonna hop over to Chiller Mania, just say what's up, just check things out, because our other friends hadn't been, and it's like it's nostalgic, honestly, for us too.
Yeah.
Being in our mid-20s, it's like wanting to go there for the nostalgia's sake too.
I know, and that's so cool, and that happens too. It happens more than, it happens more and more every day, and I don't take it for granted at all. I love the fact that someone will take time out of their day and say, hey, your books from my childhood. You came to my school when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and now I've got, these are my kids or whatever. And it's a very, I love being able to do this and get a paycheck, but there really isn't anything that can replace that. That's just the coolest thing in the world.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's so much fun. And this place is like decked out, I mean, we've got, it's like Halloween, and I've got
Yeah.
you've probably seen the fake, like
spiders.
the bats that hang and the strings that
Yeah.
somebody walks in the door, the bat drops down, or the spider that's up in the aquarium in the front, which is pretty cool. So
I think you got one of our friends with the spider. You scared somebody. I don't remember. Was it
like,
you?
go look over there. And,
it might have been
Kate.
Another satisfied customer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So in Chiller Mania, one thing that I noticed, a change from when I read the books when I was younger is, and Sean can probably talk about this a lot too, is the covers of the books. And obviously, as you have a series for such a long time, things are going to change. You're going to try to make them fresh and new. But what goes behind the decision to change those covers? Because we obviously know and love them as one look.
Yeah.
And then you revamped them a certain amount of time after.
Yeah, in 2005, we did, I wanted to do something for like an anniversary type thing, a 5-year anniversary. And at the time, the illustrator, Darren Briggy, who's brilliant, incredible illustrator. He was busy. He and his wife have a great series of books on their own, and he was busy with that. So I had another guy that I knew, Dwayne Harris, and Dwayne's art is really fascinating, because if you look at his stuff, I mean, you see him in like Heavy Metal magazine, the comic, he's got a story in there. I think it's this past month's issue that's in there. But just and he does lots of video game artwork and such. But it's all this very mature stuff. And I was looking at it, and I loved his work with color. And I said, I love your stuff. Have you ever done anything for kids? Can you tone it down a little bit? And he did, and it's kind of cool. And the working relationship. I don't know how many covers he's done now for us. I mean, 90 or something like that.
Yeah, wow.
He's done quite a few. But what the process was is that he doesn't read the manuscript. I basically tell him about what happens in the story, and then I say, okay, here's the direction, the angle that I'm thinking. And then I just turn them loose, I don't I'm a kind of a creative person myself. I don't like to be told what to do. And so and I respect that completely. I give him the level of trust that he needs. And very rarely do I ever have to say, I like this, but change this. It's usually he's got it. We've been working together long enough, and he nails it. Well, what happened was when we did that with the Michigan Chillers, it was the 10 covers in the Michigan Chillers. And then all of a sudden, all the emails start coming in. The kids are like, "Those are really cool. Are you going to do that for the American Chillers?" And I said, "No, I don't. I don't think so." But it got to the point where it was, yeah, you got to do that for the, and it just kept going and going. And finally, I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And so we revamped the American Chillers as well. And so Dwayne Harris is still, as it is now, he's still the artist for the American Chillers and the Michigan Chillers.
Heck yeah. It's cool because it gives it, like he was saying, I mean, we grew up with one cover, but it almost gives it an additional collector value to people that,
Oh, for
like
sure.
you want to get both now, and you're just like, okay, all right, let's do it. They're definitely very eye-popping. Like his art is so interesting. I was going through some of it earlier. I get what you're saying. I'm curious though. I didn't know that he did more, adult or things like that. I want to check out that heavy metal stuff.
Yeah. His name is Dwayne Harris. It's Dwayne, but incredibly talented guy. Very brilliant, brilliant genius.
So one thing that we wanted to talk about, not to compare in any way, but obviously growing up in the late 90s, being in Michigan, we had Michigan and American Chillers, but also just being a part of the Scholastic book fairs and that sort of stuff. Goosebumps was humongous.
For sure.
So not to compare the two titles, but do you like being a part of the fact that it's kind of like horror for kids, or like the younger sort of darker stories for kids? Do you think there's any similarities there?
Without question, absolutely. Because I remember, the Goosebumps series were, I don't know, I was in my 30s probably when the Goosebumps was out, and I did read them, and I thought I was reading these. I'm thinking I would, if I was a kid, 4th or 5th grade, I would have eaten those things up. That would have been exactly what I would have loved to have read. So when someone compares me, in fact, a kid, when I did a Zoom interview not too long ago, and a kid says, "Hey, are you in competition with R.L. Stine?" And it's a great question. It was a great question because because what I do is the whole thing about it is I don't claim to have any original ideas whatsoever. All I did with the books in the Michigan Chillers and the American Chillers and every book that I write is this amalgamation of, and if you want to say that I took a little bit of R.L. Stine and Goosebumps, I would say that you're correct. But I also took stuff from Ray Bradbury. I took stuff from Alfred Hitchcock. I took stuff from Isaac Asimov. I took stuff from, a lot of these things, and it was all, and hopefully it became, my unique author voice.
100%. I mean, that's a lot of people, not in, like, just in general, will do that, or kind of call things in general derivative of something else. But that's what the creative process is taking inspiration. Sure. R.L. Stine took a ton from Twilight Zone and things before him. As a kid growing up, I remember the specific moment when a friend of mine, because I heard of Goosebumps first, and was pretty into it. I was obsessed, and I remember it was 3rd grade. A friend was like, "Oh, you probably really like Michigan and American Chillers too." And I was like, "What are those?" And I was just excited to add a whole new series, to my collection. It was never a competition or comparative sort of thing. It was just a whole new world to explore.
Yeah, that's kind of, and I explained that too. In fact, and I mentioned that to a kid. This is a couple of years ago, but I said if somebody reads, let's say yourself, and who's 5th or 6th grade, if you read Goosebumps but you don't like American Chillers and you don't like Michigan Chillers, and you're just infatuated with reading Goosebumps, who loses? As far as I'm concerned, you are in love with reading. You are enjoying, the written word. You're enjoying the story. To me, that's a winner in my book. If I see a kid opening with a book open these days, I don't care if it's my book. I don't care if it's, Goosebumps, Harry Potter. I champion that, more power to you. I love seeing kids. And at that age, they have no idea what it's doing for their young mind and how
Oh yeah.
positive effect that that's going to have on them later on in life, their ability to communicate, their ability to, really just kind of immerse themselves in stories. And when they're required to write something or read something, they're going to be less intimidated. They're going to be more adept, and it's going to put them ahead. And that's it. It all started because they were having fun reading stories,
Exactly.
whether it was Beverly Cleary, Norton Juster, Roald Dahl, Johnathan Rand, R.L. Stein, doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
100%.
that's
I couldn't agree more.
true. So going off of that, talking about your kind of championing the youth reading, which I mean is something that I remember reading so much as a kid and don't anymore, but for whatever reason. But talk about your speaking engagements. I know it's a huge part of what you do now, or that you've done for a long time. You did it when we were younger. So, how much does that mean to you being able to go and talk to these kids about reading, and kind of what do you talk about when you have these speaking engagements?
Yeah, well, it started with the funny thing is it started with a teacher friend of ours by the name of Sarah Bonnet. And shortly after the first book was published, Mayhem on Mackinac Island, she called and she said, all the kids in my class and all the kids in our school, everybody's reading your book and they love it. Would you come and talk to us? And I was like, well, first of all, yeah, but what do you want me to talk about? And she was just like, oh, just come in and, and just talk about your book and the kids would love it. And I went and I had a blast. I had so much fun. And it was, I don't know, it was maybe just 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And about a week later, my wife and I came home and there was a message on our machine and that's a very old statement, isn't it? There was a message on my machine.
Yes.
But it was from another teacher and she said, hey, you don't know me, but I'm a friend of Sarah's and I'm a teacher also. And she said that, you had a great time with the kids at the school and we would like you to speak at our school too. And that's really kind of how it really got, transpired. And I had so much fun, but I began to realize something really quick. Now this is, I would say April, May of the year 2000. So it was, quite a while ago, but all of a sudden, as these phone calls from schools started coming in and I started having fun at these schools, I began to realize, that there's two things. Number one, yes, it's marketing for my books, and which is great. It's terrific to do that. But number two, I have an opportunity to maybe reach these kids about books and writing. And so my goal became that was my target. My whole idea was that if I could change their minds about what a book can be, whether they bought my book or whether they liked my books, that was fine. I mean, there was, and I tell kids that at the end of my assemblies, and I still do. I say, some of you have no interest in reading my books. That's okay. But my hope is that I want kids to go home and think, I'm not much into his books, or I'm not much of a writer, but that guy was funny. That guy was cool. That gives them a different impression of what a book might be about. And then that might be the catalyst for that child walking into a library and giving a book a chance, whether it's my book or another author's book. It might be the beginning of that child going into a bookstore. It might be the beginning of their love affair with reading. And that's what I focused on. I really focused on the fact that if I can be a part of helping create a positive impression about what it means to be an author, if I can create a positive impression about what books can be, then my job is done. And I'll bet if I do a good job, I might sell a few books in the process. And that has worked.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome. I know Sean remembers you coming to what
so specifically. PD Graham Elementary. Yeah. I remember it like clear as day. You had those skull glasses on. Yep. You probably got them right there.
I think I got a pair here. I don't know how well they'll show up, but
it was, and I just thought those were the craziest thing in the world. And it was only shortly after I had heard about your books in general. So I was very excited. And then I'm pretty sure like the next year I actually wrote you because I got to do like an autobiography on somebody and I did it on you and you like emailed with me. Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's definitely stuff I remember. And I, what was it? Mayhem on Mackinac Island. was like, I remember our librarian reading that to us like the week or so before you came as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I just remember thinking it was the coolest, like getting sucked into this tree. I don't know, it was just like the most wild story.
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely accomplished what you set out to do with me, at least. So
Yeah, good.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one last question. So, well, Sean, do you have anything else that you wanted to ask? I have one more question.
I think I fangirled pretty hard already, so you can you can go ahead.
So the one other thing that I wanted to ask, we've said the word a million times, but being from Michigan, the books obviously have a different impact on you, at least Michigan chillers do. And talk a little bit, if you would, about Michigan in general. Like, what, I know that you like traveling to the South, and I remember you talking about enjoying Tennessee. Like, obviously the United States has a bunch of great states and places to go, but what is it about Michigan that just what is it about Michigan? I guess is the open-ended question.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, well, first off, I think, if you're indigenous to a state, I think that's going to be, your love affair at first. And I think I would have to claim that as my own too. I was born in the Pontiac and Waterford area. We moved to Grayling right after my 4th grade year of school. I've always been just outdoors, an outdoorsman. I was fly fishing at an early age. I mean, I'd get off the bus when I was in 5th and 6th grade, and I'd have a 22 on my hip, a single shot, 410 or 20 gauge over my shoulder, and be out hunting rabbits or whatever. The thing that I loved about Michigan was that the change of seasons for a creative person, somebody that uses their imagination, doing the same thing over and over, drill is your enemy. It's your complete enemy. I can't do the same thing all the time. The change of seasons that Michigan has and everything that we have here is so, I mean, even the cold weather, I've grown even to love that even more in the winter time. I'm active outdoors. I'm outside and cross country skiing. I don't downhill ski all that much anymore, but I'm outside with our dogs, and I love the crisp, cold mornings. I love the change of seasons. And there's so many things in Michigan that, I mean, so many different places. I mean, as soon as you drive across the Mackinac Bridge, it's like going to a different country. You go to the Upper Peninsula, and it's just this wild, scenic, wonderful, never land of wilderness. And, and the people are so cool, and it's just very laid back. And then yet you can go to, the Grand Rapids area, you can go to Detroit area and experience the metropolitan aspect of what Michigan can provide. And, I've spent enough time in New York City. I have no desire to I certainly couldn't live there. I mean, it's great.
That's where I am right now.
Well, it's very, to me, the city is really stifling. And I'm not slamming the city life. I mean, there's people that just love it. But I don't really care. I've been to, Los Angeles, not really concerned if I ever go back there again. I love being in Michigan. My favorite time of the year, I think, is probably March, because that means I'm going to be traveling. Usually, I know the pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench into the plans, but I'm going to be bouncing around all across the state of Michigan, visiting schools, and I get to go to all these different great places. And I really feel like, I don't feel like this part of northern Michigan is my home. I really feel like I've been around the state enough, and I really feel like I'm connected to so many different areas. So, and I don't really see us, becoming snowbirds. I will admit, I love, in the middle of January, if Sue will send me to, Tucson, Arizona for a week to speak at schools, or Miami, Florida, or, something. And there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy it, but I certainly look forward to coming back to Michigan.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's, something that everyone from Michigan kind of values a lot, is the change in seasons. That's the one thing that, we all value. And it's great. I definitely, I miss Michigan. I've been out of it for a little bit now, and, sucks that I can't go back.
Not
ASAP
just
with the pandemic, but
I remember, and Kid Rock's got some great songs. He's always talking about Northern Michigan. And I remember when those songs first came out, I was like, man, don't say anything because everybody's going to come here.
right.
He was talking about, being out in Northern Michigan, catching walleye off the docks. And I'm like, stop, man, you're going to bring everybody from the country here. We got something really cool.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. But it really is. I embrace that, and I loved it. I've the Northern Michigan lifestyle and everything is just it's in my blood, and and I'm here to stay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate you having this conversation. One last thing that we want to do is do our top 5, our draft. And for this conversation, we want to do our top 5 chiller books. So we're going to rope in American and Michigan chillers together. So what we'll do is we'll let you start. You'll have the number 1 overall pick, and we'll kind of build our teams of the 5 books. We'll go you, Sean, and then myself, and we'll just keep going in a circle.
Cool.
So feel free. I mean, you have all the books on the board. Which one would you pick as your number 1 overall?
All right. Okay. So out of Michigan and American?
Yeah. We'll just go both chillers.
Wow.
Give it some variety.
Okay. All right. And then, a year from now, this will probably change, but I'm going to have to say number 1, my number 1 pick would be Michigan Chillers number 19, Drummond Island Dogman, because of the fact that Dogman is so prevalent. And for years, kids always kept telling me, you got to do a book about Dogman. And, I really enjoyed the process. I mean, I scared myself. In fact, my editor, when she wrote a little note on there saying, and Lynn is like, I don't know, 47 years old, she said that she slept with the lights on for a week after reading that. And I thought, hey, pretty cool. So, but I would have to say that would be, at least at this point right now, that's my favorite.
I love
that's
that.
Awesome. Drummond Island Dogman.
Yeah, my pick is definitely. I have to start with Mayhem on Mackinac Island because of that initial whatever, and I just specifically remember. Granted, it's been forever. I was a kid, but I remember some creature inside of the tree, and I don't know that I will randomly think back to being told that story. And I don't know, it just sticks with me. I just really, really like that one. And the art is so the girl kind of being grabbed on the cover.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most for me as a visual person, that's going to be a main reason for a lot of my picks is it's that art that just sticks in your head.
Yeah, that's true. And it's the first one. So it
exactly.
Ties it all together. My number 1, I guess the reason I would be picking this is because it was the one that left the most creepy feeling for me was Minnesota Mall Mannequins.
I knew it. You stole it.
That's the one for me that's the closest to a horror vibe. And reading it as a kid, I was like, man,
yeah,
I'm afraid of mannequins now. So so that definitely would be my number 1.
Perfect.
All right, what do you think is going to be your number 2 pick?
Number 2, I would have to say probably Dangerous Dolls of Delaware, number 2.
You stole that one from me too.
American Chillers.
Nice.
Yeah, just the whole doll thing coming to life just, creeped me out as a kid, and still, even as an adult, kind of creeps me out. And I had so much fun writing that. So I would say that would probably be up there in number 2.
100%.
That's awesome.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Creepy Clowns of Kalamazoo. Which, funny enough, this is actually a signed copy.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Again, who doesn't have a slight discomfort feeling from clowns, you know? And that art, it just sticks in your head, and that's mine.
Something about those color block, because the new covers are very vibrant and have a lot of colors to them, and something about the old ones just being color blocked, just this issue's green, this issue's purple, that will always stick. I'll always remember. So Sean just picked, I'll pick my second one is Invisible Iguanas of Illinois. I'll always remember that green, that vibrant green cover. I think my dog bit it and I had the lip taken out of it, but I'll remember that in my mind forever, that artwork. So that's my number 2 is Invisible Iguanas of Illinois.
Oh, very cool.
I just got to cross them off as we go, so I remember.
I was about to say.
All right, so
all right.
we're up to number 3.
Yep.
So I would say I would have to say Dinosaurs Destroy Detroit.
Nice.
Perfect.
That was for
Nice.
years my top pick. I was fascinated with dinosaurs growing up, and it was an enjoyable experience writing about that. And I mean, I remember when I came up with the title as Dinosaurs Destroy Detroit. That's just, God, that's got to be cool. Where do they come from? How do they get there? And what do they do? And then I tried to put some, and I think I did. There's some humor in there as well, with the baby dinosaur getting stuck in the drive-through window at the Burger World,
Yeah.
So I tried to have some fun imagery in that as well. So that was a fun book to write.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. You always had a really good mix of sort of a creep factor and a humor factor. And funny enough, because that's another thing I wanted to touch on that we didn't even do earlier was I love how all of your books, you have your protagonist meet the protagonist of another story. Like I always thought that was the coolest thing. And funny enough, Kaylee, the protagonist in Creepy Clowns, meets I don't remember his name, but meets the protagonist from Dinosaurs Destroy Detroit.
It's Nick, yeah.
Nick, that's what it was.
Yep.
Okay, so my next pick is going to be Strange Spirits of St. Ignace.
Nice.
Yep. And it's I think it's because I accidentally wrote that in Steve's spot. It's because I drove up and went through St. Ignace all the time. And again, that face and the fire on the art, it's just sticks with you.
Yeah. No, that one I definitely remember too. It's like the purple and orangey kind of flame.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was, the original cover was with Darren, and he had Mark Thompson worked on that with him, and that was one where I did have to kind of reel him in, because the original, they had this face in the fire that was much more sinister at first, and I was like, oh man, this is so good, but it's just a little over the top. So Darren kind of reeled it back and didn't make it quite as scary. But yeah, I agree, that's a terrific cover.
Absolutely.
Nice. So my next one is going to be Michigan Mega Monsters. I feel like it's got to be the Michigan American Chiller pick. I feel like I can't leave that one out for sure. So that's going to be my third pick, is Michigan Mega Monsters. Also just a cool concept too. I like that obviously with American Chillers, you're going to have to do Michigan as one of them, but I like that you have all of these Michigan Chillers, and you're like, Michigan's still going to be number one with the next American Chillers. And then we'll forget about Ohio at number 2. It's not a big deal.
All right, so let's see. Number 4 then.
Number 4.
I would have to say Wisconsin Werewolves.
Nice.
You guys are stealing mine, man.
I get letters. I mean, that one as well as Dangerous Dolls, but kids, for whatever reason, they think that's probably one of the scariest books that I've ever written. And and in fact, last week there was a kid's like, I have nightmares. I still have nightmares from that book. And I'm like, hey, cool, man. No charge for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Exactly. And again, that was just kind of a fun, an outdoors type book, and it was fun to write about that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Werewolves are always great too.
Oh,
they're few and far between now too. You don't see any werewolf things anymore.
Mm-mm.
There was a movie that just came out last year called The Wolf of Snow Hollow that I've been trying to get everyone to watch, because it's like the first werewolf movie that's come out in
a long time.
Who knows how long?
I don't think I saw that one. I'm gonna have to watch it.
You got it.
But
number 4, Sean.
Dang, that was probably going to be my number 4. So I'm going to go with, I didn't cross that off. Gargoyles of Gaylord.
Cool.
Yeah. And I think it's because up until then, my only real exposure to gargoyles was like Hunchback of Notre Dame. And I don't know. Again, I just always, I have that imagery in my head, and I was like, whoa, these things can actually be terrifying. So, yep, that's
then
what
you
we're
watched
gonna
the
put
TV
down.
show on Disney and got you even more freaked out.
Exactly.
Well, not freaked out, but
yeah, I loved. Oh man, that show was so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was going to be my next one, so I got to cross that off.
Gotcha.
I like Gargoyles of Gaylord because I think that's the city, besides Detroit, that's the city that I've like lived the most near, I guess, because it's like 20 minutes away from Wolverine. So I like drive through. I got my tire fixed in Gaylord like 2 years ago. So I'm like, I know that place. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, so Gargoyles and Gaylord was your pick. My number 4 will be Aliens in Alpena. Just like I like the concept of aliens. Sean, I know you like aliens too.
Yeah,
So
it
I
was
think that
also
was
on my
just
list.
cool to throw in there. So
Yeah.
I'll do Aliens of Alpina.
Because that one, the original cover had him like coming out of like that lake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of a purple. Yep. Kind of
Yep.
purple.
100%. It's another one that just stuck in there.
All right, number 5,
All right.
finishing out the team.
For me, number 5, I don't think I could round it out without number 16 in the Michigan Chiller series, Catastrophe in Caseville. It's that Caseville, that cheeseburger festival that has really kind of grown and has a life of its own. And I had this idea of this giant cheeseburger, which is so outlandish, but it turned out to be so much fun. And writing about these kids being chased around town by this, giant cheeseburger and the backstory of everything. It was a really fun, that book just kind of, I write an outline for all of my stories and then I rewrite the outlines, but that one really just kind of came together nicely.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing really quick that we didn't really talk about before we pick our picks is you love to go, so you have like the things like creepy dolls and mannequins and that sort of stuff, but you like taking strange things and making them the villain. Like I think of the Terrible Tractors of Texas, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes just like think about, what could I make evil in this book?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I spend an enormous amount of time, when I sue, my publicist gives me my list of the places I have to go across the country or wherever it might be. And the first thing I do is find out where the thrift stores are and the flea markets. Because number one, and you can't really see it here, but I'm just surrounded by books that I get at these places. But I love looking around and seeing these places and seeing these different things in there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's an old piece of equipment or something. But just think about, if this was like evil, what would it do? Or, and why would it do this? And how did this happen like this? And just start answering those questions in your mind. So I like taking just everyday things and turning them into something a little more twisted.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's super cool. All right, Sean, number 5.
So I'm torn. I almost picked Missouri Madhouse because again, the cover sticks out to me, but I had to go with Florida Fog Phantoms.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I think it's because I was obsessed with like Ghost as a kid, and it was such a different take on that than stuff I had seen, at the time. Like it was just a different approach. I think I thought that it was going to be one thing and got a very different book than I was expecting. And again, the art.
All right, and number 5 for me, the reason I like this book is because as you were releasing them, I always used to think of titles myself, like you said, and I always wondered, how is he going to do West Virginia or like the 2 name states? How do you do that alliteration? And West Virginia, or Wicked Velociraptors of West Virginia, I feel like it's just so cool because Velociraptors are awesome, and you just are able to do that alliteration seamlessly, and the story's great. So that's my number 5 is Wicked Velociraptors of West Virginia.
Cool.
Okay.
And I think we all got pretty great teams out of that.
Yeah.
So we'll post the images of the books as we go through, just so people can see them for anyone that hasn't seen these books, because I think that it's really, really neat. Johnathan, man, thank you again for hopping on this interview, for doing the top 5 with us.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah. And thank you so much for the years of childhood trauma and scares.
And that's all a bonus, that was just tossed in a freebie.
Oh yeah, exactly. You're very generous.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. If you're listening or watching, check out Michigan Chillers, American Chillers. If you have kids and you're listening, get them into reading and have them read these books.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.